The stars above Moon Jisu were cold and sharp, like scattered glass on black velvet. On the surface, in a dome that hummed against the silence, Park Jisu sipped lukewarm coffee and watched her screens. The nebula, catalogued as GCX 114, churned softly on her main display. It was a foggy, purple cloud, beautiful and, for 97 standard days, perfectly normal. Jisu was a geologist. Her job was to study the moon's crust, not the sky. But the harmony of spliced stars, the galactic body that owned the outpost, ran on minimum staff. Everyone doubled up. So, she monitored the sky for her friend, Min-Su, the astronomer, who was on mandatory sleep cycle that a tiny, almost invisible spike danced on a secondary screen. A ripple in the nebula's magnetic field. Jisu frowned. She tapped the panel, pulling up the logs. This was the 7th such anomaly in 10 days. Each one slightly stronger than the last. A pattern. She opened a channel to the orbiting Harmony Station, a sleek ring of silver metal where the real authority resided. The face that appeared on her comm screen was not Min-Su's. It was the flat, chitinous visage of First Assessor, a Telvar. His large, compound eyes did not blink. Yes, human Jisu? His voice was a dry click. First Assessor, I am detecting recurrent magnetic pulses from GCX 114. The amplitude is increasing. The pattern is suggestive of an artificial source, or possibly a building energy discharge. The assessor made a soft clacking sound, a sign of mild annoyance. Your analysis is noted. Our own sensors detect minor stellar gas fluctuations. Nothing outside of normal parameters for a protonebular mass. With respect, Jisu said, keeping her voice even. Telvers did not like emotional inflection. The minor fluctuations are gaining strength. I recommend a focus scan, or at least moving the civilian transport ship to the far side of the moon as a precaution. Precaution? The assessor's mandibles twitched. Against what? It is a cloud. Your persistent anxiety is a noted trait of your species. You see threats in stellar winds. Your role is to record data, not interpret it. Continue your geological work, human Jisu. The screen went dark. Jisu leaned back, frustration a hot knot in her stomach. She had been here for 3 years. In all that time, the Harmony had treated human intuition as a noise to be filtered out. They saw humans as clever mammals, good with details but prone to irrational fears. She didn't close the channel to the stars. Instead, she compiled her data, every spike, every tremor, and bundled it into a tight packet. She marked it with a code used for non-urgent, long-range updates and sent it on the next data burst towards the nearest human vessel, the GCS Jiangmu. It was a shot in the dark. The Jiangmu was an older cruiser, often used for patrols and supply runs. A messenger. But it was one of theirs on the bridge of the GCS Jiangmu. The air was calm and quiet. Captain Li Min read a report on a tablet, his face placid. He was a man who valued stillness. The ship hummed around him, a familiar, deep vibration. It was not the newest or the flashiest ship in the human fleet, but its crew was sharp, its systems well kept. His tactical officer, Commander Kim Yuna, approached. Her steps were quiet, but her presence was like a focused laser. She held her own tablet. Captain, we've received a data squirt from Moon Jisu, a geological survey post. It's from a Park Jisu. Li Min looked up. Geological? Officially, yes, but the data is astrophysical. Readings on the GCX 114 nebula. She's flagged a pattern. Yuna transferred the data to the main bridge screen. Wavy lines appeared, showing the energy spikes. See the increase? And the intervals? They're not random. They're tightening. Li Min studied the lines. Could be natural. Harmonic resonance from a collapsing core. It could be, Yuna agreed. But the shape of the pulses. Look here. She zoomed in on a single spike waveform. It has a slight asymmetry. Natural phenomena in that type of cloud are almost always symmetrical. This looks like an echo. Or a scan. A quiet alarm bell rang in Li Min's mind. He trusted Yuna's eye. She saw things in data that others missed. It was why she was on the Jiangmu and not on a flagship. Her ideas made traditionalists uncomfortable. "What's the Harmony's assessment?" he asked. Yuna's mouth tightened. "I checked the official logs from their sector station. They've classified it as background noise. Dismissed Jisu's concern as primate species anxiety." Li Min's expression did not change, but a coldness settled behind his eyes. The cost of ignorance, he thought, was often paid by those who were ignored. He had seen it before. "Run it through our historical tactical database," he said. "Look for any match, any similar pre-engagement signature from our own past. Not theirs. Ours." Yuna nodded, her fingers already flying over her console. The Harmony's databases were vast, but they lacked human military history, particularly the ancient analog parts. Humans had fought in oceans and in air long before they reached space. Yuna searched not for plasma bursts, but for sonar pings, for radar sweeps from centuries past. And an hour later, she returned. Her face was pale. "Sir, I found a correlation. Not a perfect match, but a conceptual one. In our early 21st century naval records, submarines would use active sonar pulses to probe silent areas before an attack. The pattern of pinging before a strike. It has a similar rhythm to this. Probe, listen, wait. Probe again from a slightly different angle." She put two waveforms side by side. One from a centuries-old submarine, one from the nebula. They were different technologies, different mediums, but the intent behind the patterns felt chillingly similar. Something was in that nebula, and it was looking for a way out. "Prepare a report," Li Min said, his voice low. "For Harmony Sector Command. Use their protocols. Attach the raw data and a very polite suggestion that a reconnaissance drone be sent, or that the civilian shipping lane be temporarily moved." Yuna prepared the message. It was perfectly formatted, impeccably respectful. It went out on the official channels. They waited. The reply came 2 days later. It was not from a commander. It was from a mid-level Talvar logistics officer. The text was brief. "Received. Data is inconclusive. Harmony sensor suites are far superior to human derivative models. No action required. Do not clutter priority channels with speculation. Maintain your assigned patrol route." Li Min read the message on the bridge. Kim Yuna stood beside him, her jaw tight. "They didn't even look at the comparison," she said quietly. "No," Li Min said. He looked at the star chart, at the quiet, swirling icon that was GCX 114. It sat near a major galactic trade route, near vulnerable, trusting worlds. A perfect place for an ambush. He made a decision. Go to Condition 2. Quiet routine. No active scans, minimize emissions. Plot us a course that keeps us within 5 hours hard burn of Moon Jisu and the nebula. Do it quietly, on maneuvering thrusters. They told us to maintain our patrol route," Yuna said. "We are," Li Min said, his eyes still on the nebula. "We're just patrolling a little wider. And, Commander." "Yes, Captain. Keep a live feed on that nebula. Record everything. The cost of their ignorance should at least be well documented." As the Jiangmu adjusted its course with a whisper of thrust, the nebula continued to churn. The pulses grew stronger, and in the silence of space, no one with the power to act was listening. The change began not with a bang, but with a slow unraveling. On the screens aboard the Jiangmu and the Harmony station, the purple nebula GCX 114 began to stir. The gentle churning turned into violent swirls. The magnetic pulses that Park Jisu had recorded became a constant, screaming whine that finally made the Harmony's own sensors flash with alerts. First Assessor watched from his command chair on the station. His compound eyes reflected the frantic data. This was no longer a minor fluctuation. This was an energetic dissolution. He gave the order for a full passive scan, his earlier dismissal forgotten but unacknowledged. He did not inform Moon Jisu. Inside the nebula, something was eating the cloud itself, absorbing its dust and energy. The fog thinned, pulled inward as if down a drain. In a matter of hours, the beautiful, opaque cloud vanished, leaving only the clean, dark void. And sitting in the center of that void was the artifact. It was massive, larger than the Harmony Station. It was not a ship. It was a jagged, angular structure of black metal that seemed to drink the light from the stars. It had no visible engines, no portals, no markings. It just hung there, silent and perfect, a forgotten piece of ancient technology. The energy readings from it were both incredibly powerful and utterly dormant, like a sleeping heart on the Jiangmu. Kim Yuna felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "It's a tomb," she whispered to Captain Li Min, "or a treasure chest. Either way, it's a trap." Li Min nodded silently. He knew what would happen next. The galaxy was full of species hungry for an advantage. First Assessor saw only opportunity. This was a discovery of epic proportions. The harmony of spliced stars was advanced, but they had not built anything like this. The secrets within could advance their technology by millennia. He immediately sent a claim beacon, broadcasting Harmony ownership across all standard channels. Then he sent an urgent summons for a full science team. He also, as an afterthought, ordered the civilian transport ship near Moon Jisu to hold position. It would ferry the scientists. He did not send a military guard. The Harmony's authority was law. Who would dare challenge it? The answer came from a point in space that twisted and tore open. A rift of violent green energy flashed into existence, disgorging 3 ships. They were organic in form, looking like carved bone or chitin. They were Kel vessels. The hive-minded Kel were collectors of technology, and they were not signatories to Harmony protocols. They valued only the hive and its growth. A communication hail came from the lead Kel ship. The creature on screen had a multifaceted head and sharp, moving limbs. Its voice was a chorus of clicks and buzzes, translated by the computer. "You are in proximity to Kel ancestral property. Withdraw your claim. Withdraw your presence." First Assessor was furious. "This artifact is in Harmony space. Your claim is invalid. Identify yourselves properly and depart, or face sanctions." The Kel emissary did not argue. It simply said, "You have been warned." The communication ended. Li Min, watching from the Jiangmu's stealthy distance, snapped an order. "Get that civilian transport moving. Full burn away from the artifact now." But the transport's captain, a nervous Regelian, looked to the Harmony station for orders. First Assessor sent a message. "Hold position. Do not show weakness. The Harmony fleet is en route." It was a fatal delay. The 3 Kel ships did not power up obvious weapons. Instead, parts of their bony hulls glowed with a sickly green light. Then they fired pods. Not energy beams, but living pods that streaked through space. They ignored the Harmony station. They ignored the Jiangmu, which was running silent and dark. They aimed for the civilian transport. The pods attached to the transport's hull and dissolved it with terrifying speed, eating through metal and shield alike. In less than a minute, the transport was a dissolving cloud of debris and frozen air. There were no escape pods. The silence that followed was absolute. On the Harmony station, First Assessor was frozen in horror. This was not how conflicts were conducted. There were rules, protocols, declarations. A new fleet emerged from the Green Rift. Not 3 ships, but 30. The Kel had not come to talk. They had come to take. First Assessor's pride shattered into panic. He sent the distress call galaxy-wide. The Harmony fleet was days away. He ordered his station's defensive lasers to fire. The bright beams struck the lead Kel ship's shields, which shimmered green and held. The return fire was not a laser. It was a corrosive plasma that splashed across the station's hull, melting through compartments, silencing the screams within seconds. Li Min watched the station die on his screen. His hands were clenched on the arms of his chair. "Status of Moon Jisu?" he asked, his voice gravel. "Surface comms are dead," Yuna reported, her own face a mask of controlled rage. "The base took debris from the transport. Life signs are gone. Park Jisu was gone." The geologist who had tried to warn them, a private, encrypted channel lit up on Li Min's console. It was from Human High Command. The authentication codes were unique, used only for the most dire orders. He opened it. The message was text only, brief and final. Harmony chain of command is compromised. You are witness to hostile action. Execute Doctrine Maiwang. Authorization Delta Omega. Good hunting, Captain. Li Min read the words twice. Doctrine Maiwang. The hidden net. It was a human contingency, never shared with the Harmony. A protocol for when you were alone, outgunned, and the rulebook had just been burned. He stood up. The quiet stillness of the bridge was now the calm before a storm. Every officer looked at him. First, he said, his voice clear and calm, we record everything. This is not just a battle. It is evidence. He turned to Kim Yuna. Commander, set condition 1. But run silent. Full stealth protocols. Take us away from here, not towards the jump point. Take us into the debris field of the old nebula. Use it for cover. The Harmony fleet will be here in 2 days, Yuna said. Do we wait for them? Li Min looked at the screens showing the Kel Hive fleet gathering around the dark artifact like insects on a piece of fruit. They were already sending smaller craft to land on its surface, to cut their way in. No, he said. The Harmony fleet will come, and they will fight the way they always fight. They will lose. Our orders are not to join a losing battle. Our orders are to execute Maiwang. We are no longer a patrol ship. We are a hidden net, and we wait for the right moment to close it. The GCS Jiangmu, its lights dimmed and its engines a whisper, turned and slid away into the shadows of space. It left behind the glowing wreckage of the Harmony station, the frozen grave of a transport ship, and a moon with a silent dome. The cost of ignorance was already being paid in blood and fire. But the final bill had not yet been presented. 2 days later, the Harmony fleet arrived in the Chul system. It was a magnificent sight. 23 ships of gleaming silver and bronze, their hulls smooth and elegant. They moved in a perfect spherical formation, a textbook display of order and power. At its heart was the flagship, Light of Reason. On its bridge, the surviving Harmony commanders, including a shaken first assessor who had been picked up by a fleeing shuttle, felt a surge of confidence. This was proper strength. This was how a civilized polity restored order. The Kel Hive fleet waited near the dark artifact. They had not run. They had not even changed their formation. Their ships, looking like a cluster of sharp bones, floated in a seemingly random cloud. They made no move to attack, no move to communicate. They simply waited. Aboard the Jiangmu, hidden within the sparse, lingering dust of the dead nebula, Captain Li Min and his crew watched the two forces gather on their passive sensors. The view was like watching 2 different species of animal preparing for a fight in a field. One was a proud, organized pack of wolves. The other was a swarm of locusts. Kim Yuna studied the Harmony formation and her heart sank. They're using the standard radial defense array, she said, her voice low. It's perfect for a formal duel or a siege. It presents a unified shield wall. It's also predictable, Li Min said, his eyes fixed on the screen. Every ship's movement is dictated by the position of the flagship. If you know where one is, you know where they all will be. On the Light of Reason, the Harmony Admiral, a venerable Telvar named Horizon Gazer, opened a channel. He broadcast on all frequencies, his voice a model of calm authority. Kel intruders, you have violated sovereign space and destroyed Harmony vessels. Surrender the artifact and your command ships for judgment, or be removed. The response was not words. It was a single, coordinated pulse of green light from the heart of the Kel swarm. It was not a weapon. It was a scanner, a final, deep look at the Harmony fleet. Then, the swarm moved. It did not attack like a wall. It did not charge. It flowed. Dozens of Kel ships broke apart and shot forward in twisting, erratic paths. They moved in 3 dimensions with no apparent pattern, like leaves in a storm. The Harmony fleet began to rotate, trying to keep their strongest shields facing the threat. But the threat was everywhere at once. The first Kel ships to reach firing range did not target the Harmony vessels directly. They fired glowing pods that attached to the Harmony ships' glittering hulls. The pods did not explode. They emitted a scrambling field, a shrieking noise across the electromagnetic spectrum. Harmony targeting systems flickered and lost their lock. communication between ships filled with static. Then the real attack came. Larger Kel ships, hanging back, fired beams of corrosive green plasma. They did not aim for the center of the Harmony ships. They aimed for the engines and the weapon mounts, the parts the standard radial defense was least prepared to protect individually. A Harmony cruiser, the stalwart, tried to break formation to bring its main gun to bear. The moment it left its assigned position, 3 smaller Kel ships descended on it from above, cutting it apart with precise, vicious cuts of plasma. It was not a battle. It was a dissection. First Assessor watched from the flagship's bridge, his mind reeling. This was impossible. Their technology was superior. Their ships were stronger. Yet they were being taken apart piece by piece. The Kel moved as one mind, anticipating every Harmony adjustment instantly. They exploited every gap, every moment of confusion. Li Min watched the same destruction. They're not just fighting the ships, he said to Yuna. They're fighting the doctrine. They studied how the Harmony thinks. They know the playbook. Yuna nodded, her fingers flying over her console. Their coordination is perfect. No time lag between ships. It must be a real-time hive link. That's their strength. A cold light came into her eyes. But a network that tight has a weakness. It relies on perfect, constant communication. On the main display, a new icon blinked. A single Kel vessel, smaller and faster than the others, had detached from the main swarm. It was moving away from the battle, on a direct intercept course for the Jiangmu's last known general position from 2 days prior. They've spotted us, the sensor officer said. Low probability. They likely just see a sensor ghost from our earlier retreat. They're sending a cleaner. The Kel ship was coming to investigate the anomaly, to eliminate any loose end. It was a routine task for them. Li Min looked at the approaching ship, then back at the slaughter of the Harmony fleet. The Harmony ships were falling one by one, their beautiful hulls stained and broken. The light of reason was surrounded, its shields flaring under relentless attack. Captain, Yuna said, Doctrine Maiwang is a defensive protocol. We are cleared to disengage and preserve the ship for later action. Li Min was silent for a long moment. He saw the frozen graves of Moon Jisoo. He saw the dissolving transport. He saw the arrogant blindness that had led to this. The hidden net was supposed to wait. But sometimes, waiting was just another form of ignorance. He made a decision. Signal to all decks, he said, his voice now carrying the full weight of command. Prepare for silent engagement. Power down all non-essential systems. Activate the Maiwang suite. Let's show them what a sensor ghost can really do. A new kind of quiet fell over the Jiangmu. The hum of the engines died to nothing. The lights dimmed to a faint red glow. The ship became a cold, dark rock in the shadow of the nebula's corpse. The Kel hunter-killer approached, its own sensors actively pinging the area. It saw the Jiangmu, but its sensors painted a confused picture. The human ship's profile was fuzzy, broken. Its energy output was near zero. It looked dead or dying. A piece of drifting wreckage from the earlier fight. Confident, the Kel ship moved closer, ready to fire a final corrosive blast to erase the blur from its screens on the bridge of the Jiangmu. Kim Yuna's hand hovered over a single, physical key covered by a clear guard. She looked at Li Min. He gave a single, slow nod. Unveil the net, he said. Kim Yuna flipped the guard and pressed the key. It made a soft, decisive click. Across the dark hull of the Jiangmu, panels slid open with a silence that was more frightening than any roar. They revealed not the glowing barrels of energy weapons, but rows of cold, magnetic launch rails. From other ports, a cloud of small, fist-sized drones spilled out, scattering like metallic dust. The Kel ship registered the change a fraction of a second too late. It was not a power surge, not a shield coming online. It was the sudden, stark appearance of physical objects against the void. Before its hive mind could process the threat, Yuna fired. The Jiangmu did not shudder with the discharge of energy. It vibrated with a deep, mechanical thump-thump-thump as the rails launched their projectiles. These were not missiles with bright engines. They were simple, heavy rods of tungsten shaped like darts. They were fired with such force that they seemed to simply vanish from the rails, leaving only a brief shimmer of distorted light in their wake. The Kel ship's shields, designed to deflect and absorb plasma and laser fire, did not understand the attack. The shields were like a wall of light against energy. The tungsten rods were not energy. They were solid, dense matter moving at a terrifying speed. The shields flashed as they tried to interact with the projectiles and failed. The rods passed straight through the energy field as if it were not there. The sound, when they hit, was not heard in the silence of space. But inside the Kel ship, it was the sound of the universe ending. The first rod punched through the bony hull, tearing a neat, molten hole. The second struck a power conduit. The third and fourth struck the central spine of the ship. There was no grand explosion. Instead, the Kel vessel came apart in a brutal, structural way. Its hull cracked open like an egg. Internal atmosphere vented in a silent, frozen scream. Lights flickered and died in less than 5 seconds. The hunter-killer was a lifeless, shattered hulk, spinning slowly into the dark on the bridge of the Jiangmu. The only sound was the quiet beep of confirming the kill. The crew stared at their screens, the reality of what they had just done sinking in. It had been so fast, so final. But they had no time to dwell. The energy signature of the magnetic rails, minute as it was, and the sudden destruction of one of their own, had finally registered with the Kel hive mind. The perfect, flowing dance of the swarm against the Harmony fleet stuttered. For the first time, there was a ripple of confusion in their coordination. A shared priority flashed through the network. The anomaly was not a ghost. It was a threat. A new, unknown threat. A full third of the Kel swarm, nearly 20 ships, broke away from the beleaguered Harmony forces. They turned as one entity and moved toward the Jiangmu's position. This was not a probe. It was an overwhelming response, a decree of annihilation. Captain Li Min saw the wave of icons shift on his screen. He felt no fear, only a cold focus. This was the test of Doctrine Mai Wang. "Displace," he ordered, his voice calm. "Pattern Delta." The Jiangmu's quiet engines flared to life, not with a bright burn, but with a pale blue glow that was difficult to track. The ship slid sideways, moving behind a large, drifting chunk of nebular rock. It was not running away. It was moving to a pre-planned position. The cloud of small drones Yuna had released now activated. They began broadcasting, but they were not broadcasting a signal. They were broadcasting noise, a crashing, chaotic wave of static across every frequency the Kel were known to use. It was the sound of a million screaming voices, of broken data, of pure electronic madness. The leading Kel ships ran straight into this cloud. Their perfect hive link, their greatest strength, became a vulnerability. The chaotic noise flooded their communication channels. It was like pouring sand into a fine machine. The ship's movements, once fluid, became jerky. They bumped into each other, their flight paths wavering as the hive mind tried to filter the garbage from the Real Command's .1 Kel cruiser. Its sensors, blinded by the noise, drifted too close to a piece of Harmony wreckage. A dormant power cell on the wreck detonated on impact, tearing a gash in the Kel ship's side. The Jiangmu did not fire again, stayed hidden, a shadow. Li Min watched as the swarm struggled to adapt. They were trying to find him, to look at him, but the drones and the debris and the electronic fog made it impossible. He was not fighting a ship. He was fighting a perception. "Launch the lures," he said. From another tube, the Jiangmu launched 2 small projectiles. They ignited small, low-power engines and began to fly in erratic circles, broadcasting a faint, distorted copy of the Jiangmu's old engine signature. To the confused Kel sensors, it looked like 2 more of the strange enemy ships had appeared. The swarm split again, some ships chasing the lures, firing wild blasts of green plasma into the emptiness. Li Min saw his opening. A mid-sized Kel ship had isolated itself, turning to face one of the lures. Its back was to the Jiangmu's new hiding spot. "Target its main engine cluster," Li Min said. "Kinetic penetrators only. 1 volley." Again the thump-thump-thump of the rails. Again the silent, brutal flight of the tungsten rods. They crossed the distance and struck the Kel ship in its rear. The engines died instantly, leaving the ship adrift and powerless. The Jiangmu did not stay to finish it. It was already moving again, sliding behind another cloud of debris, its engines cutting off as it went dark once more. On the bridge of the dying Harmony flagship, First Assessor could not understand what he was seeing. His sensors were damaged, but he could see the Kel swarm breaking apart, firing at shadows, turning on itself. He could see strange, dark projectiles striking with impossible precision. He could see a ship that looked like the old human cruiser, but it moved like a phantom. It was there and then it was gone. It did not fight with honor. It fought with silence and confusion and ruthless efficiency. The cost of his ignorance was being tallied before his eyes. But now it was not just his people paying the price. The Kel, who had felt only contempt for the galaxy's rules, were now learning a new, terrible lesson. They were learning what it meant to fight something that refused to be seen. The battle in the Chul system fractured into two separate wars. The remaining Harmony ships, bloodied and leaderless, formed a desperate, tight knot, fighting a slow retreat. Their war was one of light and fire, a final, defiant blaze against the swarm. The other war was in the dark. It was a silent hunt between the Jiangmu and the scattered third of the Kel swarm. This war had no blaze of glory. It was a cold, clinical exercise in applied terror. The Kel hive mind was not used to fear. It was a creature of logic and consumption. But the attack of the noise drones had injected chaos into its thoughts. The swift, brutal deaths of two ships by an unseen attacker created a new, sharp signal in the network. Caution. For the first time, the swarm's movements lost their flowing certainty. They moved in shorter, more hesitant bursts. They scanned the shadows frantically, their active sensors painting the debris field with green light. This was what Captain Li Min and Commander Kim Yuna had hoped for. A confused enemy was a predictable enemy. They're clustering for mutual sensor coverage, Yuna observed, her eyes on the tactical screen. Standard response to an unseen threat. They're trying to see in all directions at once. Which means they're looking outward, Li Min said. Not at what's already near them. Deploy the seeds. Small, canister-like objects, no larger than a man's hand, were quietly released from the Jiangmu. They used no propulsion. They simply drifted, carried by momentum and the subtle gravity of the wreckage. They floated towards the drifting hulks of destroyed ships, both Harmony and Kel. They attached to the metal with magnetic grips and became still. A Kel scout ship, its hull scarred, moved cautiously past a ruined Harmony frigate. As it passed, one of the seeds on the frigate's hull detected its proximity. It did not explode. It emitted an incredibly powerful, focused burst of electromagnetic pulse. It was a single, blinding shriek of energy directed like a flashlight beam. The pulse washed over the scout ship. Every non-shielded system on its near-side sensors, weapon controls, thruster nozzles, fried instantly. The ship spun, blind and lame, into the path of one of its own larger vessels. The collision was slow but catastrophic, leaving both ships tangled and bleeding air. Elsewhere, the Jiangmu used the environment itself as a weapon. Yuna had mapped the larger pieces of debris. She found a large, jagged piece of a Harmony cruiser's hull, spinning slowly. Target that fragment, Li Min ordered. Alter its spin with a low-yield kinetic nudge. Calculate an intercept path with the lead Kel cruiser in Sector 7. A single, smaller tungsten rod shot out. It struck the edge of the massive fragment with a silent spark. The impact was tiny, but in the frictionless void, it was enough. The fragment's slow spin altered, and its new path sent it drifting directly into the course of the approaching Kel cruiser. The cruiser's sensors, overwhelmed by noise and looking for a ship, detected the large object too late. It fired its thrusters to avoid a full impact, but the fragment's jagged edge scraped down its length, shearing off weapons and sensor arrays. The Jiangmu was not just attacking. It was turning the entire battlefield into a hostile, intelligent entity. Every piece of wreckage became a potential mine. Every shadow could hide a killing shot. The Kel could not fight the void. They could not fight the silence. Frustration, a foreign feeling, began to warp the hive mind's calculations. It needed to erase this irritant. It consolidated its remaining ships in the area into a single powerful group. They would advance together, burning the debris field clean with wide-area plasma bursts. It was a brute force solution. Li Min saw them grouping. "They're going to try to burn their way to us," he said. "They're leaving their artifact lightly guarded," Yuna noted. The main Kel force was still with the dark structure, but the group around it was smaller now. A new plan formed in Li Min's mind. Doctrine Maiwang was about survival and strategic harassment. But sometimes, the best way to survive was to strike at the enemy's heart. "Do we have a clean line to the artifact?" he asked. Yuna worked her console. "For about 45 seconds. Their regrouping is blocking their own line of sight. It's a window. Target the artifact itself," Li Min said. "Not to destroy it. Aim for the surface near the Kel excavation teams. Use a penetrator with a high-yield explosive payload." "One shot, sir?" Yuna asked, surprised. Attacking the prize would enrage them further. "We're not trying to destroy their treasure," Li Min explained, his voice cool. "We're proving we can touch it. We're showing them that their grip is not secure. A hive protects its queen, protects its food. We make them choose." The railgun adjusted its angle with a soft whir. A different type of round was loaded, a penetrator with a warhead. The Jiangmu waited, a predator perfectly still in the reeds. The Kel formation began its advance, washing the space ahead with fire. "Now," Li Min said. The Jiangmu fired. The round streaked across the battlefield, not towards the attacking ships, but over them, towards the distant, dark artifact. It flew through the gap in their coverage. Unseen, a moment later, a bright, soundless flash bloomed on the artifact's dark surface. A fountain of molten metal and debris erupted where the Kel had been cutting their way in. The explosion was tiny against the massive structure, but it was a bright, undeniable signal. The reaction from the Kel hive mind was instant and catastrophic. The silent, coordinated network erupted with a priority signal so strong it overrode all others. "The prize is under attack." The group advancing on the Jiangmu stopped. Their neat formation dissolved into chaos as every ship turned, scrambling to return to the artifact. The need to defend their central objective was greater than the need to hunt the phantom. They crashed into each other in their haste. A swarm turned into a panicked stampede. Li Min watched the disorganized retreat. The cost of the Kel's ignorance was now clear to them. They had ignored the small, strange ship. They had dismissed it as a nuisance. That nuisance had just thrown a stone through the window of their palace. "Hold position," Li Min ordered. "Let them go. Record everything." The Jiangmu remained in the dark, its hull cold. Around it, the stained void was littered with the broken results of two kinds of arrogance: the Harmony's belief in their own unshakable rules, and the Kel's belief in their own overwhelming power. Both had been shattered by a simple human truth. The most dangerous enemy is the one you do not understand. The silence that settled over the Jiangmu was heavier than before. The crew moved with a quiet intensity, their faces lit by the soft glow of screens showing the aftermath. They had not won a battle. They had disrupted one. The cost was written in the wreckage drifting all around them. The Kel swarm had disengaged from the surviving Harmony ships entirely, pulling back into a tight, protective sphere around the dark artifact. The wounded Harmony fleet, less than half its original size, hung in the distance, a shattered sculpture of metal and shame. On the bridge, Kim Yuna's eyes were fixed on a specific data feed. They're panicked, but they're not stupid. They're reorganizing, and they've activated a new system on the artifact itself. She magnified the image. On the jagged surface of the black structure, a section was glowing with a deep, rhythmic green light. "It looks like some kind of gravitic projector, probably for defense." Captain Li Min studied the image. The Kel were digging in. They would turn that artifact into a fortress. If they were allowed to fully understand its systems, the balance of power in this sector would be broken forever. The Harmony was broken. Only the Jiangmu remained. "They think we've done our worst," Li Min said softly. "They think we're a ghost that throws stones and runs. They believe the artifact is still safe because they are around it. He turned to Yuna. What is the weakest point in their new formation? Yuna ran the analysis. Here, she said, highlighting a point on the tactical map. 2 of their heavier cruisers are covering the approach from the last known position of the Harmony fleet. They're expecting any remaining threat to come from there, from tradition. But the gravitic projector, it's on the far side. Their shield wall is strongest where they expect the attack. It's thinnest where they feel safest. A plan, terrible and simple, formed in Li Min's mind. It was a move from an ancient human game called Go. You did not always attack the stone. Sometimes you used your opponent's stones to trap him. We need to make them use that projector, he said. We need to make them fire it. Sir, that thing could rip us apart if it hits. The helmsman, a young officer named Jehun, said. It won't hit us, Li Min said. It will hit where we tell it to. Commander Yuna, can you hack their system? Not to control it, just to suggest a target. Yuna's fingers were already flying. Their network is still chaotic from the noise. They've isolated the excavation teams on a separate channel. But the projector's targeting system, it's linked to the main hive for threat assessment. I can't break in, but I can feed it a ghost. She allowed herself a thin, cold smile. A very loud, very convincing ghost. Li Min nodded. Create it. Pilot Jehun plot an attack run. Not on the artifact. On those 2 heavy cruisers guarding the expected approach. We will be the distraction. We will make them look at the wall. The Jiangmu came to life again, but not with stealth. This time, it powered its engines to full, a bright blue flare against the dark. It turned and began to accelerate directly towards the 2 Kel heavy cruisers. Immediately, alarms must have sounded across the Kel swarm. The Phantom was revealing itself. It was making a traditional head-on attack. It was a fool. The 2 cruisers turned to meet the threat, their weapon ports glowing green. The rest of the swarm tightened around the artifact, confident their brothers could handle this final, brave stupidity. The Jiangmu did not fire. It flew straight and fast, a shining target. As it entered extreme weapon range, Yuna launched her Ghost. From the Jiangmu, she broadcast a massive, complex sensor echo. It was a digital phantom, a fake ship 10 times the Jiangmu's size, radiating the power signature of a Harmony super dreadnought. It was pure illusion, but to the Kel's damaged and paranoid sensors, it was a second monstrous threat emerging from behind the Jiangmu, heading not for the cruisers, but on a perfect line for the artifact's gravitic projector. On the artifact, the Kel mind controlling the defense systems saw the new colossal signature. The hive mind, still raw from the earlier confusion, prioritized the greater threat. The logic was clear. Let the cruisers handle the small ship. The projector must destroy the big one. The glowing section on the artifact pulsed once, twice, and then released a wave of distorted space, a visible ripple that shot out like a thrown stone. It was aimed at Yuna's Phantom. But the Phantom was not real. The gravitic wave shot through empty space, and it continued on its path, straight towards the 2 Kel heavy cruisers that had turned to face the Jiangmu. The cruisers saw the lethal wave coming from their own artifact. They tried to move, but they were too slow, too committed. The ripple of warped gravity touched the first ship. It did not explode. Its hull simply folded. Metal compressed like paper in a fist. The second ship, caught at the edge of the effect, was spun violently, its structure screaming as it tore itself apart. In that moment of horrific, self-inflicted destruction, the Kel swarm's coordination shattered completely. The hive mind was flooded with panic, grief, and contradictory data. It was chaos. And the Jiangmu was already gone. It had cut its engines the moment the projector fired, going dark and diving down, using the wreckage of the first cruiser as a shield. It was now inside the Kel's defensive sphere, closer to the artifact than any surviving Kel ship. Li Min saw his final opening. The artifact's projector was spent, recharging. The swarm was in disarray, and the flagship of the Kel, the largest, most central ship, was turning clumsily, trying to understand what had happened. All remaining kinetic penetrators, Li Min said, his voice like iron. Target the flagship's command spire. Fire. From the shadow of the wreckage, the Jiangmu unleashed its final volley. A stream of tungsten rods crossed the short distance. They struck the bony command tower at the heart of the Kel flagship. They punched through one after another in a terrible, precise rhythm. There was no grand explosion. The flagship simply went dark. Its lights died. Its engines flickered and failed. It became a dead, silent mountain of bone and metal, drifting aimlessly. That was the end. The remaining Kel ships, their hive mind suddenly silent, their leader gone, broke. They did not retreat in formation. They fled. They scrambled for the green rift that had brought them, crashing into each other in their desperation to escape the silent, staining void. The Jiangmu did not pursue. It hung in the darkness, its weapons cooling. Below it, the dark artifact sat, once again silent and untouched. Around it, the void was stained with the blood of two fleets, a permanent record of the battle. The cost of ignorance was now complete. The Harmony had learned their technology was not enough. The Kel had learned their hive was not invincible. And all of them had learned, in the most final way, what happens when you ignore a human warning and awaken a human war. The GCS Jiangmu drifted slowly towards the remains of the Harmony flagship, light of reason. The proud vessel was now a scarred and broken thing, its hull pitted with corrosive burns, one of its elegant spires sheared clean off. The few remaining Harmony ships, perhaps 8 in total, hovered at a distance like stunned animals. They made no move to approach the dark artifact. They made no move at all. Captain Li Min stood with Commander Kim Yuna in the Jiangmu's small shuttle bay. They wore simple duty uniforms, no ceremonial armor. They carried no visible weapons. The only thing Yuna carried was a data slate. The airlock door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, and they walked across the short docking tube into the heart of the Harmony wreck. The inside of the Light of Reason was a tomb of soft emergency lights and frozen air. Telvar crew members, their chitinous shells cracked, moved slowly or lay still where medics tended to them. The air smelled of ozone and something sour. Every Harmony I turned to the two humans as they passed. The looks were not of gratitude. They were of shock, of fear, of a deep, unsettling awe. They were led to the command deck. It was damaged, a large hole in the viewport covered by a shimmering energy field. First Assessor was there, one of his limbs immobilized in a medical cast. He stood beside the command chair where Admiral Horizon Gazer lay still, covered by a sheet. The old Telvar had not survived. First Assessor looked at Li Min. The arrogance was gone. In its place was a hollowed-out shell, filled with a terrible understanding. His voice, when it came, was a ragged click. You hid this," he said, gesturing weakly towards the viewport, towards the stained battlefield beyond. "You let us believe you were weak. You let us fall." Li Min stopped a few paces away. He did not sit. He did not speak with anger. His voice was quiet, heavy with a fatigue that went beyond the physical. "We did not hide. We offered data. Commander Yuna filed a formal report. Park Jisoo gave you her warnings. You had all the information you needed. You called it anxiety. You called it noise." He paused, letting the words hang in the cold air. "You were not ignorant of the facts. You were ignorant of us." First Assessor's compound eyes could not look away from the human captain. "Your methods, they were without honor. You fought from the shadows. You used tricks. You made them destroy themselves. It is barbaric." Kim Yuna stepped forward then. She held out the data slate. On it was a simple two-waveform comparison. One from a 21st century Earth submarine. One from the GCX 114 nebula, days ago. "This is the pulse from the nebula," she said, her voice clear. "And this is an ancient human tool for finding hidden enemies. We sent you this pattern. You saw only derivative models. Your ignorance was a choice." She lowered the slate. "What you call barbaric, we call using the terrain. What you call without honor, we call surviving. You built a perfect hammer and thought every problem was a nail. We have always known that some problems are viruses or traps or ghosts. Our history taught us that. You never asked about our history. You only saw the surface. First assessor stared at the matching waveforms. The connection was undeniable. The warning had been there in a language they refused to learn. The cost was all around them. What happens now? He asked, the question not tactical, but existential. Now, Li Min said, you will send a full account of what happened here to the Harmony High Council. You will include all data, including our warnings you dismissed and our actions you witnessed. You will not edit it. Commander Yuna's logs are already transmitting to Human Command. The truth will be in two places. He turned to look at the shimmering field covering the hole in the viewport. Outside, the dark artifact hung indifferent. The debris of two fleets, Harmony Silver and Kel Bone, swirled around it in a slow, permanent dance. This, Li Min said, nodding at the view, is the stain. This is the cost. Remember it, not as our victory, but as your failure to see. He gave a short, respectful nod. Then he and Yuna turned and walked back through the silent, wounded ship, past the watching eyes of a civilization that had just been unmade. Back on the bridge of the Jiangmu, Li Min sank into his chair. The weight of the last days settled on him. Yuna stood beside him, watching as their ship gently undocked from the light of reason. Set a course for the rally point, Li Min said. Low power. We are in no hurry. As the Jiangmu turned away, its crew worked quietly. There was no celebration. They had done a terrible, necessary thing. They had unveiled themselves, and in doing so, they had ended an age of ignorant peace. Far behind them, First Assessor finally looked away from the departing human ship. He looked out at the stain. He saw the shattered Kel flagship, killed by its own weapon. He saw the broken Harmony cruisers, killed by their own rigidity. He saw the artifact, a prize that had cost everything and was now untouchable. The lesson was carved into the void. Humanity was not a peer. It was not a junior member. It was the universe's most dangerous variable. A species that remembered the dark and knew how to wield silence as a weapon. The galaxy had been simple. Now it was complex. Now it was stained with the knowledge that ignorance was not bliss. It was blood and fire and silent, screaming metal. And the bill for it had finally been paid in full.